Forum. So I am going to go ahead and get us started. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to just start things off with a disclaimer. So the GCA Forum will be recorded and retained for the legally approved retention period under Washington State policy. It is subject to release under the Washington State Public Records Act or the Federal Freedom of Information Act. It will be posted publicly on our GCA YouTube page. And slide decks for recordings for this and past forums are linked on our GCA Forum webpage, which is available there. All right, thank you all for joining us for this Spring 2024 GCA Forum. We ask that you make sure that you are muted in order to reduce background noise during the presentation. Please ask us questions using the Q&A feature in Zoom. This is a webinar. We've upgraded from web meeting to webinar, so it's Q&A instead of chat. We will pause after each segment to answer questions. Most of all, we want you to be engaged in this meeting because this is for you. All right, on the agenda today, we have a couple items. We have updates from GCA with Cheryl Haycox. We have an update on the award lifecycle overview from Susan Wilbanks. We have a discussion of the Washington State estimate letters from Michelle Davis, and a review of the R1234 and cost reimbursable line status reports with Patrick Carney. Starting us off is Cheryl.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Jonathan. So I have a couple updates from GCA, kind of what's been happening for us over the last few months. First and foremost, the great news, we've hired a new grant analyst, so we now have 6 people. I'd like to introduce Nat Waldman to our team, let you guys know you may start receiving some responses from Nat. They started May 1st, and I swiped them from our very own award setup team. So Nat is still kind of double dutying between the grant analyst, learning our role, and then also helping to chip away on those backlogs, which I think you may have noticed are greatly reduced. Welcome to Nat. The next one is I kind of want to I have a few award portal, I'll call them enhancements that have been implemented. First one is that we were systems folks, so it really wasn't me, figured out how to search in award portal by either the EGC1 or the Sage cycle, which hopefully you guys know how to find the Sage cycle because I don't use it so much. So that hopefully will be very helpful and not available earlier. The second improvement that I'm going to talk about is we added a report to the cost center reports. And that is a list of tasks. So you can download or pull a list of tasks that are upcoming and then sort them how you'd like. That suggestion, a great one, came from a campus person. My next one is that we also received a request from campus to add a column in the result grids to show the award line start date. So we were able to do that. So you'll notice that when you pull, I think any one of the grids, I think they all show now the award line start date and the end date. So it kind of gives you some extra sorting powers. And the last one is ability to take your list of invoices and export them to Excel. And we find that we use that because it kind of helps us sort of see what the invoice situation is and allows us to kind of sort stuff in a way that makes sense. So it could be more individualized. So those are our award portal updates. The next topic I have is kind of something we just recently learned, which is that we noticed that Workday kind of has some issues preparing a final invoice or perhaps any invoice when a grant is in deficit. And what it's doing is it's not taking like the direct cost of a charge, and particularly salary, which has associated benefits, and then the indirect cost or the F&A that's also associated. And so what it's doing is it might be out of proportion. So a sponsor will get the invoice and it'll look like our indirect cost rate is really high or really low, or perhaps the benefits are out of proportion. And so we're working on that. We just sort of recently discovered it. So if you get a sponsor asking you about an invoice where the indirect cost is kind of fishy or something doesn't look quite right, just forward them to GCA Help. We've kind of seen it, but if you do know that the grant was in deficit, you can kind of guess that's what is happening there. So we're just saying this, if possible, if you can clear a deficit sooner rather than later, that is super helpful for Workday to provide a nice invoice. But I just also have to have a little disclaimer. I know it's not always possible to do that. So speaking of deficits, some of you may have noticed we can do them now. So we recently received the process and a job aid for how to process deficits. And so we have been madly going through all the requests that we've received over the last, well, since June of last year, because we stopped processing those mid-June last year. And so they have been processing those and clearing those out. So if you've got an award line and it's in deficit and it's time to close, just, let us know using award portal and just tell us where that deficit should go. And I think the team is getting those done within a few days, maybe a week at the most. I know I'm going through a lot of this stuff fast, but I can answer some questions. And kind of another thing that we've noticed also in the realm of deficits are kind of the ones that are a little harder to see. And that's like a cash deficit. And so another kind of process that GCA used to do just regularly that we haven't been able to do still yet, which is the end of an award, we would reduce the award amount to equal either the receipts that we had or the expenses, kind of depending on the situation. And so in this case, I'm kind of showing a cash deficit. So when you look at this award line, you can say, well, okay, well, this ended in August of last year. And you can see that the award has like $2,176,000 and the expenses are well under that. But this is in deficit because the total cash received is $2,103,000. So we have a deficit of about 20, it's a cash deficit. And so kind of just really what happened in like a situation like this is charges continued to post after the, this one happens to be a letter of credit. And so the PMS account closed, but charges continued to post. And so they keep going up, but the cash will never change because that account is closed. And so that could also be true for an invoice if our sponsor has closed the purchase order or, whatever they're drawing against. Okay. And then this next, I'm moving over into sort of a thing that happened earlier this month. We had said, if you want to make your work tag changes to like change a cost center, an assignee, or a program, we had kind of one route, but then we thought, well, gosh, we're almost at the end of May here. So starting Monday, if you have a grant line that you need to change, like a cost center or the assignee or program, if it's 1 to 39 grant lines, you will send a GCA only mod. And if it's just one grant line, which is not uncommon, we get that kind of frequently, it's just a GCA mod, and you can make a comment that you wish to change the cost center from this to that. And we will do it. And then if you have more, we're asking that you can send them using the form that we have on our website. and submit them on a GCA only mod, like one per award number. So you could have multiple grants under one award, and that would be one mod. And then if you have a doozy, 40 or more grant lines, you'll use the same form, and that will be a connect ticket. And those are coming to GCA, and what I'm doing is forwarding them on to a team that can do batch uploads. And they've said that they will be processing those every 2 to 3 weeks. That gives you a kind of an idea of how long those take to process. Okay. Mouse. And then let's see, moving over into notes from the award setup team, they asked that we shared a couple things. They wanted everyone, if they could take a moment to double check your SAGE budgets to make sure that your dollar amount on the SAGE budget matches the award amount, or the dates match, and that the sponsor program activity is the correct type. Those are the top 3 reasons that items have to be returned. And then they also noted that what's happening is that we're getting 2 mods for the very same thing because somebody's trying to make a change to it or add a document. And that is, if that happens, if you have something like it's in GCA and you need us to make an update, just send us an email and say, hey, can you return this mod back to me, or ASR, either one. And then you can make your updates and changes and add your documents, and then resubmit it. The good news here is that our backlogs we are current on the awards, on the ASRs, and we are current on advance requests. And the list of mods is low. So we are getting there. Hopefully we're going to make that June 30th date for clearing it. All right, I hit a lot of things, and I'm going to guess that there's a bunch of questions.
There
are.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead. Let's start with this one. We have a question. What if we want to change grant hierarchy and cost center? Do we do a GCA only mod?
So cost center is yes. Cost center is a kind of a really higher level change. Grant hierarchy, if it's just one, you can send us an award portal ticket. So our team, the grant analysts, can make those changes for you. If you have a bigger list of it, you could send it to us, I would say, in GCA help, and we'll chip away at it. It isn't particularly hard, but we always want to make sure that we set aside focus time to get that right, because it's a lot of numbers happening there.
Okay,
So yeah, GRH to grant hierarchies come to GCA directly, and cost center is a mod through SAGE.
Thank you. We have another question. What about the conversion cost centers? Should we go ahead and change the conversion cost center even though it still goes to the correct business unit?
I'm not sure if I am qualified to answer that. I do know that there's definitely some recommendations that I've read from others to maybe not do this kind of stuff in fiscal year 24, because we're coming up to the end of it. So I think that's really got to be a business decision. If it's working, maybe leave it. If it makes more sense to you for you to change those, then I think you can make that request. But we're not really sure, like, all the implications and like how the cost centers actually look and the structure looks to you guys, because we can't see that.
All right, thank you. Another one, I think this one should be pretty easy. So the question is to clarify, this is for for group bulk changes. Each award needs its own mod. So if it's one line for multiple awards, then it's multiple mods, not with one mod with multiple change requests across awards.
Correct.
Okay. That's pretty clear there. Next question is, does GCA move monies from a prime budget to a sub budget if the sub budget is in deficit at the end?
That is a fabulous question, and I am going to say that we don't know yet. In the legacy system, that was regular course of business at the end. That was part of our closing transactions, is that we would true up, if you will, each of the subs and then take action at the, we call it the parent or the primary line now. And we're not sure. So I feel like the last I heard, which was just this week, that we're still kind of looking at what our options are. And just kind of to add to that, the closing process really just got started at the beginning of maybe mid-April. Like we got the ability to do, there's the ability and then the job aid. And those came to do deficit transfers. So that's kind of like, we can do those now, and we couldn't for like 10 months. And we still don't have the job aid or know how to do a surplus transfer. And then we also have not been reducing award lines with award grant award lines, which is kind of where I think the question is sort of going, that you would put everything in balance. And so the question for us is, from a business standpoint, do we do the year as a whole and we let everything look the way it was and then make an adjustment from one line? We just don't know. It's not working the same way. So we have to come up with a proper plan.
All right, that is all of the questions that we have at the moment. If
Okay.
anyone has more questions, they can put them in the chat and we will get to them at the next question session. But for now, let's move on to the award life cycle overview with Susan Wilbanks.
Thank you. This is something that will be really familiar information to some of you if you've been here for a while, but we do think it's important an overview for newer people. And also, since with the past year, we haven't been able to do a lot of our regular kind of life cycle processes, we felt like it was a good time for a reminder of how things are kind of supposed to work as we're starting to get all of our processes really up and running again. So when I first started working in grants, I was a little surprised that the chart looks a bit like a circle, because I think of it as a little bit more linear. But the research life cycle really is very much a circle. We are constantly finding new funding, going through all the research and reporting and work that's involved. And then as one thing closes, either a renewal of that funding opens or something else opens up. And the primary groups who are working with awards are departments and PIs, OSP and GCA. As you can see, the department and the PI are involved in every phase of the life cycle. Everything ultimately does come down to the PI's responsibility to carry out the terms of the award. Then OSP and GCA have specific areas where we are also involved. And OSP versus GCA. People often have, I know that OSP gets questions that are better for GCA, and GCA gets questions where we end up forwarding you to OSP. And it can be a bit confusing at times. We commonly refer to OSP as pre-award and GCA as post-award. But the situation is a lot more nuanced than that, for any of my crazy ex-girlfriend fan friends who recognize that reference. Broadly speaking, OSP deals with contractual issues and GCA with financial ones. So anytime you have a contractual change during the life of your award, whether it's receiving new funding, so it's adding to the contract, or if it's a change in the period, if it's a change of PI, all of these things are going to go through OSP again. So it's post-award, but it's a post-award contractual change that goes through OSP. And GCA does have some involvement in pre-award because some things require financial officer review or signature during pre-award. So that's that. And here's kind of what GCA's part of the cycle looks like. We receive award setup requests, ASRs from OSP, set up the award with as many award lines, the GRs, that may be needed. We then submit invoices and or financial reports as the award requires, process any modifications that we get from OSP or campus throughout the life of award, and then we complete the final invoicing and or reporting and close out the award. And again, this is whatever the sponsor agreement requires in terms of invoicing and reporting. So, how can you help us help you? First of all, we recommend being very proactive. Whenever you get a new award or a change to an existing award, you're going to want to set up and maintain a calendar for each of your awards and plan ahead to avoid last-minute scrambles. For example, if you know that you have a cost share requirement that needs to be met, say, by June 30th, hopefully you're already working on that now and not leaving it for June 29th. You definitely want to avoid last-minute scrambles and make sure you have any time for questions or clarifications, and maybe even add a little more time than you normally would, just because all these systems are still so very new to all of us. Another recommendation is to add your email contacts in the award portal system for each of your awards and keep them current. That way, if GCA needs to reach out to you, we know who the right people are and they will get those messages. We also recommend that you respond promptly when you get an award portal ticket or any other communication from GCA. And if the sponsor contacts you about a financial issue, loop us in right away. If that's saying they have a question about a financial report, an invoice, whatever, let us know. And last but not least, know your final action date. And the final action date is another thing that hasn't really changed much from how we did it before UWFT, but of course everything looks different now that we're in Workday. And the final action date, also known as the FAD, is the last day an award line, a GR, is open for the department to post expenditures. After the FAD passes, your award line will automatically change from open or expired, where it's available for expenditures and transfers, to close out in progress, which is closed to expenditures and transfers. And this automatic transfer is a very recent change. I'd say it's just in the last month and a half that we've been able to make that automatic change. And that's happening on every Monday. It will go through and close anything whose final action date was since the last auto update. So how is the FAD calculated? It's all based on the due date of the budget's final report and or invoice as laid out in the award agreement. So this is something that's system generated based on that deadline, and it's going to vary based on that deadline. If you work with a lot of awards, you'll very commonly see final action dates that are around the 51-day mark. If the invoice is due in 60 days, and then around the 70-day mark, if the final report is due in 90 days. So you might get used to thinking, oh, I have that much time. But then if you get an award that has an unusually early due date, say that the final report is due 15 days after the award ends, or the final invoice is due 30 days, that's going to push the final action date earlier, because it's all designed to allow us to have time to prepare the budget reconciliation so we can get that final invoice or report in and meet the sponsor deadline, whatever that may be. So the little diagram here, which will be on the slides that we send out and is also available on our website, shows how this process is calculated. It's typically 1 to 3 weeks before the financial report or invoice is due, and we just want you to get everything done before then. So where can I find the final action date? It is in the award portal grant information page, and it's toward the bottom of the left-hand column. If you'll notice that same section where it says email contacts, you can click there for contacts email maintenance, and you can update that's where you can update the contacts for this particular grant, and we'll be sure we're contacting the right people. So what's the impact of the final action date? Once this is passed, a grant is eligible for invoicing or reporting based on the expenditure total as of that date. Any charges that post after the date will not be included in the final report, invoice, or letter of credit draw. We will consider submitting a revised report or invoice if there are extenuating circumstances, but do note that a sponsor is not obligated to accept a late or revised report or invoice. And if they do not reimburse an invoice or allow a late draw for charges after the final action date, the department will be responsible for the resulting deficit. Any questions?
All right, we do have a couple questions. They tend to be focused on how to update the contacts in award portal.
Yes. So let me go back to this slide here. This is a link for contacts email maintenance. And if you click on that, which I unfortunately can't do live because this is just the slide, but clicking on that link will take you to an interface where you can enter new contacts or remove old ones, and then save that and see it immediately update in Award Portal.
All right, we have a follow-up question. How do we update the names of the grant managers listed on that page?
That is not something that GCA has control over. I am blanking on exactly who does, because I go look it up in our little wiki spreadsheet every time someone asks, and I see popping up in the chat that it's the shared environment who can make those changes.
Right, thank you very much. I
Also,
am.
you connect.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I'm not seeing any other questions. If you guys have additional questions, please put them in the chat, and we will deal with them in the next question session. But for now, moving on, Washington State estimate letters with Michelle Davis.
Thanks, John. So every year for Washington State Awards, we have to submit either an invoice or an estimate of costs incurred through June 30th per the state's fiscal year end requirements. And the deadline this year for the billing information is July 24th. And for those of you with Washington State Awards, you might already be familiar with the process, but we submit estimate letters so the state can encumber these funds before they expire at the end of the fiscal year. So if you have a Washington State Award, you might receive a notice from the sponsor requesting an invoice or estimate letter. If you do, forward it along to GCA so we can review. And GCA will also be going through all the active awards to determine which ones require an estimate versus an invoice. And I've outlined the general criteria here, but we'll issue an estimate letter if your award ends by June 30th, or if your invoices require department prepared backup. And we'll issue an invoice if your award expires after June 30th and doesn't require supporting documentation from your department, or if you have deliverables that were met through June. The week of June 17th, GCA will be sending out award portal requests for awards that require invoicing information. And we ask that you respond to these requests by July 5th so we can prepare the invoice or estimate letter. And just as a final reminder, expenses that aren't billed or included in the estimate letter will most likely not be reimbursed by the state. So it's important that you respond to our requests as quickly as possible. Any questions?
Give me just a moment. There's a bunch of stuff happening.
Okay, no worries.
Okay. So I don't think there's any questions on your current topic.
Okay.
There is some follow-up stuff. People in the chat have noted regarding changing grant manager roles in award portal and in Workday. That you can make these changes in the AGC1 in Sage, and that the grant manager is also a security role in Workday that people can be assigned to have that authority over particular grants. So I'm gonna mark those as completed. Question that we have, when you mentioned budget reconciliation, I believe this is from Susan's, but maybe Cheryl's. We do not have a mechanism for PI review. Do we have any idea how to handle this? I think this would be for Cheryl.
I don't think that would be for GCA, honestly. You're talking about a PI review for reconciliation, and I think that's higher level than us. I think that's way up there. I'm pretty sure the reconciliation has been a topic of concern since we went live, actually even before we went live.
All right, thank you for that. And again, if there are more questions, keep them coming and we will get to them in just a moment. But for now, our last presenter of the day, we have the R1234 grant budget versus actual report and the cost reimbursable line status report with Patrick Carney.
Alrighty, thank you. So I'm just going to touch briefly on what these two reports are and how GCA uses them and how you might use them in your department as well. So we'll start off with the R1234, otherwise known as the grant budget versus actual. This is kind of our spiritual successor to the MyFD budget summary pictured below. It'll show similar things, including the budget amount, the transactions prior, and in your reporting period in question, and any totals and balances remaining. As a point of note, MyFD is currently viewable, although not editable, but that is set to change at the end of June. There was an email announcement recently that MyFD will be fully retired and the information will be available in the BI portal. So while you can still view MyFD for now, this is set to retire June 30th. A quick tip on the guidelines. So when using the R1234, if you search for that in Workday, you will find your grants budgets versus actual report. When you click the report, you'll be prompted with a series of inputs. The company, the award, the period, and the time period are all required fields, but there are other optional fields that may help you refine your search for what you are looking for. When it comes to filling in the company, GCA recommends using the Academy Security COH03, as this company will pull information for both UW 1861 and School of Medicine company awards. This comes in handy frequently when you have an award that has many grant lines, some across SOM and some across 1861. And if you're trying to get the full picture, putting in either 1861 or School of Medicine will leave out any information from a grant that's not on your chosen company. The grant field, while not required, can be very helpful if you want to look at one or multiple specific lines on your award. If you leave this field blank, you will see information across all award lines on the award. However, if you input one grant, it'll show only the expenses and budget plan for that grant, or you can put in multiple to see a grouping of grants, say 2 out of 4 on your award. For the period and time period, within the period field, there are 2 main options that GCA uses, but there are many more. The 2 main ones GCA uses are the current and prior period selection and the fiscal period selection. We will use the current and prior if we are trying to look at the full life of an award through today's date, and the fiscal period if you are looking for a specific month of expenses. If you're using the current and prior period, once you select that, you'll be prompted between either your current month or the last month. So in this case, you would be prompted with either May or April. Typically, we select the current month as that would bring you through to date, but you could also select the prior if you wanted to see all charges up to the prior month. Then under the award time period, you would select award time period life to date award. That's going to pull in your full expense list through the award life. And if you're looking for a specific month, you would first select the fiscal period in your period category. This will prompt you with a list of fiscal years, and you want to make sure you select the fiscal year, not calendar year you're looking at. So for example, if you were trying to pull in expenses for December 2023, you're going to want to select fiscal year 24 as December 23 falls in that fiscal year. Then once you've selected your fiscal year, you choose the month within that fiscal year. Once you've run a report, you're going to see a result something like this. You'll see it looks similar but different from what the MyFD showed previously. Everything on the left not highlighted in blue is going to be your current budget spend. So on the far left, you can see the plan. Spend in prior period will be anything charged before the period you're looking at. Spend in current period will be any spending in either the month, or in this case, I've pulled an award life to date. So everything charged to this award will go in current, and then the life to date should be the total of those two. If your award has any cost share, that'll be viewable here as well, highlighted in blue and not pictured, but further off to the right, there is program income if your award has any of that. The details for what you've drawn are initially hidden, but if you click that drop down arrow by details, you can see your report details for how you drew this report. And if you want to change anything for what you've searched, the highlighted, they look like little sliders up next to the 3 dots by grant budget versus actual. You should be able to click those 3 sliders and adjust anything you're looking at. So if you wanted to look, say you're currently looking at June and you wanted to look at July, you'll click those 3 sliders and change your time period to July instead of June. So you still have the ability to move back and forth between months, but it is not as simple as MyFD was, where you could just click next or prior month. One thing to note about those sliders is if for any reason you refresh your page or anything like that, while you will still be able to view the report, that slider will not function any longer, and you'll have to redo the full R1234 report. So that is something to note. And below is another result where I pulled a single month result. In this case, it looks pretty similar to the award life to date since the month I had selected. You can kind of see there in the screenshot, there is no spend in that current period. Highlighting that we do use the security COH03 as our company. Again, this is to pull any 1861 or SOM charges, as sometimes there are grants under both companies in an award. So the functions of this, there are a lot of options and additional functions. As was mentioned, there are different selections for the time period or the period. To discover how to pull another query you need, oftentimes we have people asking about how to pull for a given year, quarter, fiscal year. I believe most of these are doable within there. You kind of just have to experiment with those fields in the R123. If you can get the results expected, that's awesome. However, if you are unable to pull the query you want or have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us at GCA Help, and we will see if we can either figure out how to get that report pulled to say, look at a specific quarter. And if we can't resolve this, we'll submit a connect ticket, or please submit a, excuse me, I think I had a typo in there. We will submit a connect ticket and escalate to the team that can help. So next is a brief touching on another useful report in Workday, and that's our cost reimbursable line status. This report shows the charges in their various stages of billing. You can see on this example here, that this has 3 different categories currently applied. Billed is going to be any charges that have posted and already been invoiced. Ready to bill are the charges that are posted and ready to bill. It's kind of self-explanatory and should be included on our next invoice. Pending award line date review refers to any charges where the budget date falls outside of your grant date, and those need reviewed before they can be approved and invoiced. There are other categories such as partially billed, where an expense was billed partially but not in full, whether that was due to a deficit or other reason. Any unbillable expense will appear in that. I know it's kind of small, but the one right above cost reimbursable line status says unbillable. On hold are any charges that we have to put on hold for a time until they can be billed. And awaiting settlement, the final one, is for any charge, typically like an invoice where the charge is posted, but the cash has not yet settled, so it hasn't gone through that weekly settlement run. Those are going to appear in your awaiting settlement. So this report is helpful in viewing any given expense that is and where it is in the billing process. You can see either any charge that has been invoiced, or if you have a charge on an award that has not been billed, you can see why it has not been billed yet. If you have a question on the status of an expense viewed here, you can reach out to us in award portal to review that, and we will work to get that updated to see if we can move it from either pending date review to billable and get that out the door to the sponsor. All right, and with that, are there any questions?
We do have some questions. The first one is, how do you run an R1234 report for specific or multiple months? I know we can do 1 month or award life to date, but I frequently need to look at multiple months.
Let me go back. So there are ways you can do that. It's not as frequent that we in GCA pull it, so I'm not offhand know it, but I think if you select under the period, you should prompt fiscal period and then start, you select the most recent month you want, say that's this month. And then under time period, I think there's a bunch more options than we give. It should be able to say like last 3 months or last 6 months. There's a couple different ones in there. We haven't pulled that one too often, so I'm not the most familiar, but I do know if you kind of play around with those 2 fields, there's a lot of kind of variance you can pull within that.
I also believe that you can pull in the BI portal. I believe there is an equivalent to the legacy variable reporting period report, and that might get you more of what you need. And one of our, thank you, Sarah, there's a job aid specifically for R1234 time periods in Finance Connect. So thank you for that, Sarah. The next question is there any way for us to look at the transaction list from the R1234 as we were able to in MyFD?
Yeah, so once you've run the report here, any of those highlighted drop downs or whether you have charges, if you click either the drop down next to, say, in this case, tuition, it'll show any subcategories there. And if you click on any given object class or spend category, I guess, more accurate, the highlighted 31,000 or something, it'll show you all of the charges that posted in your period in that spend category. You can also export this to Excel, which will give you the same information with a lot of like hidden fields under these that you can expand out to see and then get down to each expense within there as well. So you can definitely look at those. Sorry.
No, that is totally great. So we're gonna call that. For our future forum, we will have another forum in August 2024. You can access our forums at the link shown here. There will be a survey about today's forum that will be sent out soon, where we will also be sending out, if there's any questions that we didn't get to today, more on that in just a moment, then we will send out a Q&A sheet with answers. And of course, you can contact us at Award Portal with the link here via email at gcahelp@uw.edu or on the phone with the phone here, 9 a.m. to noon and 1 to 4 p.m. And with that said, we have a fair bit of time before we, before the lunch starts. So we can go ahead and we can start taking some more questions. Let's see. So this is going to be a little bit interesting because we have people coming in and answering the questions in the Q&A forum. So I'm going to just be trying to pick out questions that we want to answer live. I'll go ahead and I will touch on the question, how do you export one Excel with all of the information from R1234, or do you have to export one per category? And this has been a challenge for a lot of us on the GA team as well. And the short answer is it's not as easy as it was in MyFD, but there are a couple different ways that you can do it. So the easiest way to get a single spreadsheet with like across all of the object categories would be if you're trying to pull for like a particular invoice. So for like if you have an invoice for April, you can do the cost reimbursable line status report. And you can just, it looks like Lily's answering that question, but to access that, you can just search cost reimbursable line status report in Workday, and you'll be able to access that there. And once you get in there, you will be able to pull a list of all of the expenditures, the transactions that went onto that invoice. If you want additional details or different details than is available in that report, which does happen, you will unfortunately have to stitch together either from the looking at the invoice itself, not the PDF, but the invoice itself in Workday, or from the R1234 report exporting by category. I don't know if there are improvements that are planned to make that easier. But that is where we are right now. So give me just a moment. And if you have follow-up questions on that, please feel free to put those in the Q&A. Go ahead. So is it possible to display the Washington State estimate letter important dates once again? Give me just a moment here. All the way back. After this, okay. Sorry. Okay. Is this, so we got this one here. So the deadline for Washington State estimate letters, it looks like it's these here. And then I think this next one also had some dates. Yeah, okay, please respond to the board portal requests by July 5th. We're gonna be sending these out on June 17th. If you guys have more questions about this, these slides will be posted to our website after we finish the forum. So, right, and we have a question for, we'll just go ahead if anyone is able to, I believe this is indirect costs, we'll just take a crack at it. Is there any update on when they are going to be fixing the balances for the indirect cost issue? Do we have anyone with any ideas on that one?
Are we sure, Jonathan, that ID is indirect cost?
That was my guess. Katie, if that is incorrect, please feel free. Yeah, okay. So Katie confirmed that it is indirect cost. So
I think it may be the encumbrance because those aren't reducing as expenditures post.
I believe that is what Katie is talking about, but she can confirm. Yes, that is what she is talking about.
I do know that it is prioritized right now, so the fix is ongoing. I'm not exactly sure on the timeline when that's actually going to be fixed, though.
Okay. Is there an award portal bulk update option for contacts listed like there used to be in Grant Tracker? I don't think so. I think I looked at the email contacts thing, and I think it's just you do it, for the award that you are on, but people with more information, wiser people can let me know.
I think you're correct, Jonathan. I feel like the award portal is kind of retooled, right, based on Workday, and we just don't have that same capability yet. I'm going to say yet because we don't know.
All right, and if Lena, if you could specify what you would like a comment about. And then, yep, if any of you guys have any other questions, you know, that have just been burning a hole in your brains, this is the time. And so this is about PI review and audit, and it looks like Cheryl, you flagged that one.
I think this is the one that I probably responded to in the chat, that Vicky had also replied that internal audit is tackling this. So that's as much guidance as we can provide, is that they're looking into what the process should look like. So there hasn't been any like guidance coming from a central office yet on this.
Thank you, Juan. All right. Okay, so Lena asks, so we don't have to get PI approval as of now, and I do not think that that is how I would interpret that. I think that we still have to get PI approval, but we don't have guidance on exactly how. Juan, you want to?
Yes, I would not interpret it that way. I'm just saying that there's not like a specific process like there was in my FD where you would be able to, get the PI to do the reconciliation and sign off on it. So not that you don't have to, just that we haven't given guidance, so we're waiting on further instructions.
So right now, so Vicky clarified PIs need to approve via email or some other notification. So I mean, it sounds like you still need to get a record or documentation that your PI did view and review each month, but there's no specific guidance and process on how or what form that should take. All right. If anyone else has any questions, I mean, we can hang around for a couple more minutes just to okay, so we have a comment on my FT moving to BI portal. The auditors ask for JB details such as PI email approval or other documentation that helps explain or justify transfers. But since we will not be able to access that, I would depended on my FT to hold that document. So it sounds like my FT held records and justifications of why we did certain things that the current system does not do. Lily, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that according to UW IT, the BI portal report that's replacing MyFD will provide access to the attachments to journal vouchers that were posted in MyFD. So we should still be able to access historical documents as long as the journal voucher falls within the UW's retention schedule.
All right, and Sam says thank you, so it sounds like we got that. Thank you for that, Lily. Another question about the monthly reconciliation from units. What Workday report do we run to do the monthly reconciliation and have the PI verify it? And I think what has been said is that there is no standard process for how to do that monthly reconciliation. There's no recommended report or process to do that. So
Can we clarify that that GCA right now for the monthly reconciliations, it's just GCA is saying that we haven't had involvement with this. So we're not giving specific instructions or guidance on what unit should be doing with that reconciliation. So the best that we could do is take the advice from other individuals who have been messaging us on kind of what their process is. but we are not advocating or stating what you should or should not be doing, since that is not a process that we own. So as I said, if I would speak with other units or wait till internal audit provides more official guidance. I do know that within our own office, our post-award fiscal compliance office had also been working with internal audit, but I would need to go back and check and see where they are at with that, if there's anything more concrete that they're going to give, or if post-award fiscal compliance is going to post something on their website giving recommendations that would be coming from us as a central office. So I would need to get back to you guys on that.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you, Sarah, for pointing out the confusion. We have another question from Belinda Sachs. Will the BI report link to Ariba? I recently used the MyFD link to Ariba to find payment information on an invoice for a subaward. And I would hazard a guess to say probably not, because Ariba is a legacy system that is not going to be sticking around probably for too much longer. So I mean, I believe we still have it now, but I would imagine it will be sunset at some point in the near-ish future. So we shouldn't rely on that. If anyone else wants to jump in.
I am going to say I don't think that's for GCA to answer. I think that perhaps that might be for the data group who run the BI portal, like what attachments and links will be available. I would hope they know, because GCA doesn't run the BI portal, nor do we run Ariba.
All right. Well, I'm not hearing anything from anybody else. So if no one else has any questions, then we might call this a forum. Thank you all for joining us and spending your day giving us your time, and have a great rest of your day.